Welcome to the Grow Your Law Firm podcast, brought to you by Pilma. This podcast helps lead lawyers to more growth, profit, and freedom. Here is your legal marketing expert and host, Ken Hardison.
Well, hello, everyone. This is Ken Hardison, and welcome to another episode of Grow Your Law Firm. And today we have the honor of having David Klein with ConsulTV. Welcome, David.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and today what we're going to talk about is something that I see as the future. Actually, it's already here, but I see it in the future being more stronger, and that's streaming ads on TV, on streaming TV, using ads on streaming TV. And the reason is because more and more people are cutting the cord. I cut the cord recently, and I'm 67 years old. So if I'm doing it, that tells me that a lot more people are going to be doing it. Young people, you expect them to do it. But anyway, I want to talk today, David. Tell me a little bit about yourself, your experience, your background, and your company, and then I want to delve into this. I really want to get into the weeds on this.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been in the advertising world for 20 years. I started my own magazine and I started building websites and doing PPC and SEO 20 years ago. I was around when the yellow pages were still a thing. So I watched that transition, which I think has some relevance to what we're dealing with right now, from as businesses move their inbound advertising budgets from the yellow pages to pay-per-click advertising. So I was involved in that in the early O's and the mid O's, and had always had clients that were legal clients back then. And so over these past 20 years, I've had the pleasure of working with law firms from across the country and helping them with that transition from the yellow pages into pay-per-click, and got involved in some really high-end websites and SEO and learning about integrations and having websites be a salesperson for you, an intake person for you, working with your CRM and all of the operations things that take place along with that. And then starting about 3 years ago, I left the corporate world and joined a firm with a good friend of mine, my business partner. And so he'd been with ConsulTV for about 8 years. That's how old our company is. I joined 3 years ago. And ConsulTV had started really even pre-COVID. They saw the huge opportunity. It's hard to imagine, but 4 or 5 short years ago, before COVID started, streaming was there. You could buy streaming ads. There wasn't the adoption that there is now, but ConsulTV started building out their platform. So we are the source. We are demand side, full service demand side platform. And then when COVID hit, streaming usage skyrocketed. It hasn't gone down since. And so Chris and I have been friends for a long time. He's been trying to get me to come over, and I said, yeah, let's do this. I saw this transition starting to happen 3 or 4 years ago, and now I think we're at and maybe even past the tipping point. When you're in it, it's hard to see, but that's kind of how I ended up where I am today.
Yeah. So for people that don't know what we're talking about, can you explain what streaming ads are?
Sure. So the short answer is any ad that's served through the internet.
Okay.
That's the one sentence answer. But if it gets super, super complicated, because you can have ads served on various devices. So OTT is the term I think that hears a lot. It's kind of a silly acronym. I'm not quite sure who invented it, but OTT stands for over the top. And that refers to, and the reason that acronym exists is because it was started by the TV folks, the traditional TV folks, and it was over the top of traditional TV is where OTT comes from. But that acronym includes all ads that are served, whether it's on a smart TV, whether it's an app that's on your desktop, an app that's on your mobile phone, it's OTT. Underneath that umbrella, though, there's connected TV, which is important because that's the smart TV. That's where ads are served. It's non-skippable. It's just how people are used to seeing 30-second television commercials is on their TV. So that term is connected TV. And then there's also online video. So that used to be called pre-roll, online video. Those terms are interchangeable. And so those are 30-second ads, but they're not through apps. Those would be served through websites that support ads. So all major websites now, all entertainment, news, weather, sports, etc., all the stock, that they all support 30-second and 15-second TV commercials on websites.
like I was in Walmart the other day, just looking around. I like to look and see what new technology. So I went down there and was looking at their TVs. There's always something greater and better every year, right? But what I was looking at was that even TVs for $300 are smart TVs now. So that tells me that the average Joe, not somebody that's going to go out and buy a $3,000 or $4,000 TV, but somebody just needs a TV for their house. I call it a blue collar worker.
Yep.
They got access to smart TVs now. It's not just for the rich.
No, and you really hit the nail on the head, Ken, because Roku struck a deal with Walmart years ago. So that Walmart branded TV that is a smart TV, it has a Roku stick in it. It's it does it. It's not, that's a change in technology. We used to take that Roku stick and stick it in the plug in the back of the TV, but now that no need. So you take that TV and you plug it in the wall, you attach it to your internet, whether it's directly with the cable or Wi-Fi, whatever the case is, and voila, you have Roku. And so all of the content that's available on Roku, you are now plugged into it.
Yeah. We've had some of our members try this OTT over the last 2 or 3 years, and they'll try it for 2 or 3 months and they'll come back and say it just don't work. And my question to you is, when I went on broadcast TV in 97, 96,
Yeah.
I got instant gratification. I mean, I went from signing 20 cases to 120 cases. That's not the way it is now because it's so saturated. I see now lawyers, it takes them 12 to 18 months to start seeing a really true return on going into a market into a market, depends on how big the market is and how saturated. But so my question is streaming or OTT or whatever, is it is it getting to the point that it's like that, like broadcast TV is now getting into it?
It is. And so, like I said, I've been doing this for 3 years. I have clients that have been with me for 3 years. So I have good data. And ultimately, even though it is TV ads, you're pushing the ads out. It's digital, but it's not quite the same measurability that we're used to on the pay-per-click side. But ultimately, Ken, it's advertising. People don't do it because they think I'm a pretty soul. They do it because they want to see more leads. They want to see more cases coming in. And so unequivocally, so not only is the market more saturated, but it's also infinitely more fragmented. So you have more ads that you're competing against, and then where people are consuming their entertainment is across multiple devices and platforms and networks, et cetera. And I do want to speak to that because it's something I hear all the time. I tried streaming. My TV rep came to me and said, we're doing the streaming and we can include it in your TV package, and it didn't work. And so a couple things. Oftentimes we see maybe law firms don't dedicate enough budget to it. I mean, if you did a direct mail piece and you only sent out 100 pieces of direct mail, then you're probably not going to get a great response. So there's that piece of it. But there's also, and I'll just go back to a little history of, again, looking at the Yellow Page transition. I don't know if you ever heard this, but a lot of the Yellow Pages around the country, they would do this program. It's called Bucket of Clicks. And so they said, we get you 1,000 visitors and it would be whatever, 1,000 visitors for $1,000. I can't remember this 20 years ago. Well, a lot of those visitors were branded searches, just the name of the law firm, and it might come from yellowpages.com. And so it was a product that Yellow Page would offer. They weren't necessarily the digital company. They were just piggybacking on it. And it wasn't a great product. It didn't work very well. So in the same respect that this industry is evolving, and sometimes the way that streaming TV is placed, you have to have scale. You have to control your reach and your frequency and targeting. And just for example, I'm getting in the weeds. You said you wanted to get in the weeds. So this is an example where if you do streaming TV, say with your local station, then you might be on some Samsung or Roku or a little bit of Hulu, but most of it might just be on the local, their app. Because again, they want to push as many people to their app. That's their inventory, so they don't have to pay a publisher to serve those ads. It's that inventory is 100% profit, and that's often not targeted. The frequency might be really high. You don't get the scale and the tonnage, so therefore you don't get what you want from it, which is increased leads and increased cases.
Well, I think, but there are companies like yours and other companies that are not the TV stations that can do the same thing, and they can go out and have more choices, I guess is what I'm saying.
Well, and this is just, and especially for folks that are buying TV. I mean, think of it this way, is that the TV station is the wholesaler when they're talking about traditional TV. It's they are the publisher. It is their inventory that they're selling. They're the wholesaler. If you want to be on the local ABC affiliate, you got to place an ad with the local ABC affiliate. When they do streaming TV, they become the retailer and they have to place their ads on people like us. We are the wholesaler. So now that the script is flipped because we have direct relationships with the publishers and we sit on the various exchanges, which we can get into that if you'd like. But that's where just the same as again, the world is more complicated. So when you're buying by the way, linear TV still works. People still watch linear TV, and you shouldn't. We tell folks all the time, don't stop doing linear TV. The tonnage is there, the eyeballs are there, and you should do that. But ultimately, that some of the facts and figures are really simple. Is about 50% of folks do not have access to linear TV. They don't have a cable subscription. They don't have a satellite dish. So if you have a 30-second television commercial you want to put into your market, about 1 out of 2 households you're not going to reach if you're only on linear TV. So you have to start looking at how to get that messaging that you created to folks that are consuming their content via streaming.
So how do you determine like which one of these, like whether it's Roku or Crackle or I don't know, all the different ones, Pluto, Hulu, now you got Netflix, you got Amazon.
Yep.
And there's probably 1,000 of them. I don't know, but the deal is, how do you know which one to go to? I mean, how do you figure that out?
That's a great question. And it's super complicated. So just the way that the system works is that we're the demand side. So we take the ad and then we put it out into the world. And then there's a couple ways you can do it, either through an exchange. So you put it on an exchange, and then there's the supply side. So all of the folks that you mentioned, those are publishers: Roku, Samsung, Pluto, Crackle, LG, on and on and on. There's actually over 200 that are big publishers. There's probably another 200 or 300 that are smaller publishers. And so that happens in the exchange. So in a lightning second, when somebody's turning on, they take that Walmart TV and they plug in the wall, they get their internet connected. And then when Roku comes up, they see Freebie. That's an example too. So Freebie is, as it implies, it's free ad-supported TV. They go, oh my gosh, I haven't seen an episode of Seinfeld in forever. I think I'm just going to watch a couple of episodes of Seinfeld. So the point is, so that's happening. That's what the consumer does. They don't know and they don't care. They just see content that they like. What's happening behind the scenes, though, is that we're targeting an audience. So we don't necessarily care whether they're watching Seinfeld or sports or the weather. But if we're looking, for example, if you're a law firm and you want to look for folks that are in certain zip codes, so geographically, we can be very specific where we serve those ads geographically. And then from the data points, we can look for people that have been in market looking for legal assistance, that have been in an accident recently, that have low income, that are low credit folks. If it's a workers' comp campaign, they're blue collar workers. We can do that. A lot of law firms we work with, they do trucking. So if they're folks that are delivery drivers, have CDLs, we can do that. The other big one is the Spanish speakers. That's a really common data bit that we use. So where these data bits come from is it's both online and offline behavior. So it's everything from your motor vehicle record. So if you want to serve ads to homes that have a motorcycle registered to that home, your local DMV, they sell your data, and it creates an infograph of you. So it's anonymized data behind the scenes, but then we take your motorcycle commercial and just serve it to homes that have a motorcycle registered, because we append that physical address to the IP address where we serve the ad, and all of this happens in a split second. So the answer to your question is that we have all these options, all this fragmentation, but what we're doing is we're using the technology that's available to serve the ad to a very specific audience.
Yeah. So it's almost like, it's geo-targeting, so to speak.
It is. It's geo-targeting, but again, using the data bits that are relevant for that creative. So if it's a Spanish-speaking ad,
demographics versus just, it's not just the zip code; it's also the demographics.
Exactly. Right. And we can, again, and what'll happen is we'll have a law firm that they might have just a general auto accident related ad. and then they have a motorcycle ad. So those are two separate campaigns and they have separate targeting. And then you can also see from a reporting standpoint what's happening at impressions served and so on and so forth.
So what I've been told is that the OTT is a lot more expensive per thousand viewers than regular broadcast TV. Is that true? And if so,
Yeah, it is. I'll give credit. We work with an agency, and the president of the agency, she says she tells her clients all the time, just because it's digital doesn't mean it's less expensive. We get this kind of impression in our brains. Well, gosh, I can consume all this content for free, so it must be less expensive. The short answer to your question, Ken, is yes. The CPMs are higher, but I always look at it. It really is apples and oranges. And I'll just give you an example. I know this is maybe a longer answer to a short question. CPMs are higher for streaming. The answer is yes. That's the short answer. The longer answer is that, yeah, again, looking at traditional TV, the Denver market, we're very familiar with. We know a lot about that market. When you place those ads and you're in a $2 to $5 CPM on traditional TV, and they say, well, hey, these are our demographics. So those are based on the Nielsen numbers. I'm not saying anything that anyone doesn't know. Well, Nielsen determines those numbers by having 150 households that have a book and a box. And then Nielsen extrapolates those 150 households and they say, these are your demographics for these TV shows, and this is how many people watch it. And that's the data that they have. So it's based on 150 households for 4 million people that are watching TV in Denver, Colorado. You're smiling right now. Good. I'm glad, because you can see that, yeah, there's some targeting, not much. Where we're coming from is that, look, that the CPMs are in the, now, and this is something where it has gotten more competitive. We can be in the upper teens and in the 20s, again, depending on how it's placed. I don't want to get into that because everything we do is customized. We don't have an off-the-shelf offering. But where I say it's apples and oranges is that you're just reducing the waste significantly because you're putting those ads in front of a very specific audience.
Yeah, it's like what you really want to look at is not cost per thousand, cost per case.
Yep, and one of the best case studies that we have is a firm that I've been working with now for 3 years. And they're in a market where a huge national company came in and really started buying up the TV. And they just said, look, we don't want to, and we can't compete with this national company that's really going to saturate the market with traditional TV buys. So they made the decision about 2.5 years ago as they moved a significant chunk of their budget from linear to streaming, same ads, same budget. And they've seen about a 35-40% increase in cases over the course of this time. And that's no baloney, because it's the only change is that instead of serving those exact same creatives to the traditional TV channels, now they're doing it through streaming through our platform.
Well, I mean, it makes sense. I think the big deal is it's sort of like I always preach about newsletters, but you got to stay with it. You can't just try it for 3 or 4 months.
Right.
It takes time for it to gain traction and before you start seeing an ROI. So what I'm hearing is this is about the same thing. But I mean, I hear out there that a lot of even the major players down are knocking 25% of their budget off and putting it in streaming. So when the big dogs are doing it, that tells me it's probably smart to do it.
It is. And I just really just hit folks with a couple facts and figures. That the one that really jumps out at me, and it's a simple number now, and it's growing all the time, but it's just eyeballs. Like, ultimately, we know that the TV ads, I'm not saying anything that anyone doesn't know, is that we know most of our market is not in the market for a law firm right now, but they will be. We know at some point you're going to be in an accident. Again, this is not news. But when 50% of your eyeballs you're not reaching with linear TV, you have to really take streaming serious. And so even at a 25% budget, again, I'm not saying you should be at 50% budget on streaming, but I'm just saying that's where the eyeballs are, is that 50% of them are just exclude, and they're core cutters. The other really important fact is that, to your point earlier about smart TVs being so much more accessible, 90% of households right now have a smart TV. So you've got 50% of folks don't have any access to traditional TV, but 9 out of 10 households, they have both. So they have cable TV, and then on average, the average household has about 7 apps that they subscribe to. 30% of households subscribe to 10 apps. how many people said, I want to watch this particular show or this particular ball game. I mean, Fubo gets folks like that because they do all the live sports. So they get a 7-day free trial and then they forget about it. And then boom, now they have 10 apps. So you've got 9 out of 10 households do have access to streaming content, and only 1 out of 2 have access to linear.
I mean, what do you see as the future of streaming ads and OTT?
Yeah. Well, I mean, at some point it'll all be streaming. And I'm not saying this because I mean that's self-serving, but you also see what's happening just technologically, because all of the companies, Paramount, your local TV station, Spectrum, everybody, they want to get rid of the boxes. They want, and I know satellite, like DirecTV right now has a huge ad campaign. They have the birds saying that they don't have the dish anymore because they're going to apps, because it's less expensive for them to not have that hardware, to not have that satellite dish, to not have that box. So the point is, just from a pure technology and hardware standpoint, is that all of the providers and the distributors of content, they want to serve their content via apps and via the internet. So at some point when all those old TVs go away and all the boxes and the satellite dishes go away, it's all going to be served via streaming, including the local affiliate TV station.
Yeah, it's wild, man. So what do you think, because different markets are different, right? I mean, just like TV markets, different markets are different.
Absolutely.
You got more saturation, you got more competition in certain markets. Well, what is your target? And maybe you want to explain what this is, but what's your target reach and frequency on these things? And you might want to explain to our listeners what reach and frequency is, because some of them might not know what it is.
Of course. Great question. So that's one of the nice things about working in a digital environment. You have a lot of control over that. So the way that and this is specific to ConsulTV, and this is different because we don't do something called co-viewing, and I will throw that out because that affects reach and frequency. And the perfect example is Hulu. So Hulu, you don't need me. I'll just throw this out to the listeners. If you want to go into Hulu, they have a self-serve platform. I think you can get on Hulu for like $500 if you want. I don't know exactly what the CPM is. I think it's in the $30 to $40 range. But they use something called co-viewing. I want to cover this really quickly because it's important to know. So what co-viewing is, it's a factor, as Hulu is saying. They're not trying to cheat anyone. They say, we think on average 1.75 people are watch this ad, which seems about right. I mean, you have the smart TV on the wall. If you got 2 people in the home, that's 2 eyeballs. So they use a co-viewing factor of 1.75. So if you serve 100,000 impressions, it's really 57,000 impressions. Because if you take 57,000 times 1.75, it gets you 100,000 impressions. So that's just something to be aware of if you're purchasing that service. Is there a co-viewing factor? For ConsulTV, we don't use co-viewing. So whether there's 1 person watching the screen or 10, it's 1 ad served is 1 ad impression. So when you talk about that reach, and we say we serve 100,000 impressions or 1 million impressions, that is 1 million impressions being served into that market. And how many people watch it, whatever that number is, I don't know, but we're 1-to-1. So to answer your question though, Ken, is we see we do want a certain amount of tonnage, and I'll just break it down like from a mid-market. If you're say a 50 to 100 TV market, just being really rough numbers. So that's what I'm going to call like a mid-market size. Then, what we want to see is you want to have a reach in the 25, 30,000 range. And on a frequency number, we can control the number of times on average that ad is served to each IP address. And we see like 4 to 8 is a good frequency, even up to 10 is okay. We don't want to kill people with the ad where they just get annoyed because they see you over and over. But then 1 or 2 is probably not enough. So 4 to 10 is probably a good range. So
when I was doing TV, I always like 7 was my sweet spot. I felt like,
there we go.
I mean, that was just me, but that's just personal. But I just felt like you said, if you got over 10, people get sick of you. I can't go nowhere. They get pissed almost. Reach was a little harder for me. I used to buy my own TV because I went to a media buying academy.
Okay.
And so that's where I learned about cost per thousand and ratings and reach and frequency and all that stuff, and that apples are not A $400 Oprah Winfrey show back then was probably cheaper than a $20 Gilligan Island rerun. You know what I'm saying? Because it's cost per thousand. It's not cost per ad.
Yeah.
You know what I'm
Well,
saying?
yeah, it's just you're spot on. And again, and this is the difference is that cost per thousand with Gilligan's Island and Oprah. And I love that example because look, you got potential clients watching both of those shows, but we don't know really where they are because again, especially in the broadcast realm, I mean they're in the DMA, so
Yeah.
DMAs can go long, wide and far.
Well,
So
the thing I like about what you're doing, what I like about this, and I did not realize this, if I had a niche practice like trucking or motorcycles, especially motorcycles, and I could niche it out to where I don't care if I'm paying $30, $40 per thousand because TV, broadcast TV, you're just a broad net. So, 2/3 of those people don't even care about you. You know what I'm saying is, but it's a numbers game, right? It's a numbers game. So really, it's not comparing apples to apples or oranges to oranges. It's two different things, and you said it at the beginning. And you've explained this better to me than anybody. I've talked to a bunch of people over the last 2 years about streaming and OTT, and nobody's went into depth like you have. So I applaud
well,
you.
thank you. That's kind.
No, I mean I'm being serious. No. I mean, you're not paying me to do this. I just really, I mean, I'm just what I'm saying is, I think you've made it where I understand it, and I think if I can understand it, I think that my listeners and our viewers can understand it.
Well, that would be great.
And like I say, the deal is you got to have patience. What I'm hearing is you got to have patience with it. We got a mastermind member now, been on TV for 12, 13 months, and he's not seeing a big bump, but he's seeing something, and he's spending 10% of what's being spent in the market, and they say that's kind of like the threshold. I don't know if you
Yeah.
Pastor, you agree with that. So he's doing the right things. I mean, he's not doing stupid stuff. It just takes a long time, man. Because and then you got Morgan and Morgan coming in all these places. That even just disrupts it even more, because they'll go in there. I had one member tell me, he said, "Yeah, like our top spender's like 80,000 a month. He's going in there and spending 200,000 a month." I mean, that's just very disruptive. I know why he does it. I mean, he's trying to push people out, disrupt it. I mean, it's a bully play, but I can't say it's a dumb play. I have seen it not work for him, and I've seen it work for him. I've seen him go to some and leave after 2 years, and I've seen him take over markets too. So, like we say, every market's different, right?
Well, and this is where, again, it gets into the measurement. And I want to be very careful here because I think also with the perception of digital is that it's measurable and people know that this is not pay per click, but I still think there's kind of a lingering expectation like, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
the yellow pages was so great. I could I could leave yellow pages, go to pay per click, and then be able to track my calls and record them and that kind of
Yeah,
thing.
it's just impossible now,
No,
David.
it is
Because people could go watch that streaming ad and then go to your website and call you from the number from the website or fill out the form.
well, and that
I think now lawyers, back when I was doing it, you could do it.
mhm,
You could track pretty good, but now you got to take a 360 look, a bird's eye view,
100.
and let's look at the trends. Because I was all about tracking and all this, but it's just about impossible now. I mean, it really is. I mean, you got to look at the big picture and kind of say,
We see people they watch TV with their cell phone in their lap, and when they've been in an accident, they're fighting with their insurance company. They Google the name of the law firm, and this is where it gets really powerful. Is that it's infinitely more powerful when somebody Googles Ken Hardison Law, and then they saw your ad, they Google your name, and they call you. That's a pretty warm lead. If somebody says lawyer near me, you pay a ton for that click, and it's a harder conversion. I'm not saying, again, I think that's kind of obvious. So that's the power of this and where we see that lift over 90 days. I'll even throw out, 90 to 120 days. We don't need a whole year, but we can see in 3 to 4 months. And to your point, I mean, that we have this conversation a lot. So I'm just going to throw it out right now and say, look, let's just benchmark. Where are you now? In terms of your cases booked and your leads generated. Law firms know that, like they know those numbers. So let's benchmark that and let's take the existing creative that you have. We're going to put it on our platform and let's hold ourselves accountable and look at this in 90 and 120 days. And we see people that invest the correct amount, that have the right reach and frequency, then they feel that lift, that we see it, and we're just our business is growing, and we're really helping law firms, which is the best part.
So if somebody wants to get in deeper with you and talk to you about it and see what it would cost in their market, how can they get up with you, David?
Sure. So my name is David Klein. It's Klein. It's like Calvin's last name, no relation. So David Klein. And my email address is dklein, Klein, at consult.tv. And my phone number is 704-564-8745.
Yeah, that's a Charlotte number, a 704 area code. I know
That's
that.
right. Well, you know I'm a southeastern guy. I'm out west. I'm west Coast now, but I'm from the Carolinas.
Yeah.
I'm from Charlotte.
So is there any kind of special offering for people that listen to this podcast? Give them something,
Yes.
give them a
Yes,
reason to come
sir.
back and hear me another day.
Sure. Yeah. No. Listen, Ken. We really appreciate you being on the podcast, and because of anybody that calls and mentions the podcast. So what we'll do is we'll run 30,000 retargeting impressions. That's a $500 value, no charge. We're just looking if you do like a minimum $3,000 CTV spend, then we'll throw in a $500 value of retargeting impressions. So folks that have come to your website or seen the ad, then we'll retarget them with your ad, 30,000 impressions.
Okay, good deal. Good deal. All right. Well, listen, I guess we covered everything. Anything I missed that I should ask you?
No, your knowledge of media is great questions, and I'm glad I was able to add some value. And I
Well, you
really
did.
appreciate
You
you
taught
having
me
me
some
on.
stuff. I learned something today. That's why I love doing these podcasts, David. I learned something every time. I just did another one an hour ago that we're recording, and I was talking to somebody about LSAs, and I learned a little nugget that I didn't know. I mean, and I just think that's the way you get better. Keep learning.
Yes, sir.
All right. Until next time, this is Ken Hardison, dedicated to your success.
You have been listening to the Grow Your Law Firm podcast, the podcast that leads lawyers to more growth, profit, and freedom. Go to growyourlawfirm.com to find more ways to market and manage your law firm. Please leave us a rating and review wherever you listen to your podcasts.